And, this is a situation that's going to be really interesting to watch as well because, Aiyuk doesn't really, when it comes right down to it, he doesn't really have a ton of leverage. He can accept the 49ers offer. He can continue to hold out, but he would risk being fined further if they decide not to wipe those fines away. We'll find out about that. He also could potentially, if he doesn't report, lose out on accruing a year, and he could be facing the exact same dilemma next offseason. He could also play.
That's DEFCON 1. Like for Aiyuk to do that is.
Well, I mean, okay, it's interesting you said that. So, and then alternately, Aiyuk could play out the 5th-year option at $14.1 million, but the Niners can still franchise tag him next year if they want, preventing him from hitting free agency next year.
Well, hey, at least that would get him that 29 to 31 million that he's looking for, right?
Well, the interesting thing to me is that Mayoko, who a lot of people feel is, I don't want to bash Mayoko because Mayoko's a good buddy of ours. But some people feel like sometimes the Niners will put out their thoughts through Matt. And he came out of nowhere last week and said it's entirely possible. Now, where did this come from? Because this was not uttered at any presser. So this had to come from somewhere else. This is from Mayoko last week. He says it's entirely possible that they don't sign Brandon Aiyuk to a long-term contract and let him play out the final year of his deal and see where it goes from there. And TJ Hushmanzada came out. He knows Aiyuk, says Aiyuk would like a Amon-Ra St. Brown type deal, but the Niners don't want to even give him that. And then, of course, you've got Pearsall and Cowing starting to show good things on the practice field during the OTAs and the mini camps. So you just kind of wonder about this, There's still a lot of smoke coming out of Pittsburgh that they expect that the Niners may trade one of their receivers. There was talk from Michael Lombardi. He went on a podcast. He went on the GM Shuffle podcast, and he said there was talk at the draft that Pittsburgh thought they had made a trade with the Niners, whether it was for Debo or whether it was for Aiyuk, I don't know. But then things kind of fell apart late. And now they're saying that, people are betting, well, of course, it's probably Debo and not Aiyuk. But, it's interesting. I mean, Debo, it wasn't that long ago that Debo was one of the most dangerous players in football. I mean, 2021, he had over 1,700 yards. He had 14 touchdowns. He got that incredible contract, $28 million a year, based on that. And now we've seen him kind of drop off the last couple of years. So it's interesting that they're saying that that Debo could be dealt at any time between now and the trade deadline.
By the way,
not a foregone conclusion that the Niners go the entire distance this year with Aiyuk and Debo on the roster.
Look, to have this year identified, circled, bold, italicized, and underlined is a Super Bowl or bust year. You can't be trading wide receivers who are your one or two wide receiver in season like that. That just doesn't happen often. So like that to me feels like fantasy football. And I just don't think the 49ers are going to go about business like that. And now how they've gone about the business up to this point can certainly be criticized. But that to me feels like, well, that would be really unexpected. That's a new lever for them to pull.
Well, you kind of already said, I mean, that it would be, it would be a nuclear option to tell Aiyuk to play on the 5th-year option. And yet Mayoko, who, I don't know where this came from, but it came from somebody, right? He didn't just hatch this thought on his own out of nowhere. And he came out and put in print that it's possible that they don't get the deal done, let him play out the final year of his deal on the 5th-year option, and then see where it goes. And Silver kind of made the point where if the Niners don't, he kind of summed this all up last week in a tweet that I did a video on. And he basically said, hey, look, if Aiyuk rejects the Niners offer, then it's, a Hunger Games battle this year between Debo and Aiyuk to see who's more productive and who the Niners go forward with next year, because we assume it's Aiyuk, But if Aiyuk doesn't play ball with them and they can't get a deal done, and the Niner, it sounds like when you're reading the Mayoko blurb that they're putting out in the ether, hey, guess what? We don't have to do this deal, and we're perfectly happy to have him play on the 5th-year option at $14.1 million and deal with next year. So, that could keep the team together as far as nobody gets dealt, but they could basically tell Aiyuk, you know what? Sit there and take it, and we'll tell you when we're offering an extension. And if that is indeed the case, Damon, well, what does Aiyuk then? How does he respond to that? Does he respond to that by being totally professional? If so, then maybe he stays. But if he responds to that by becoming an island unto himself, who knows? All of a sudden, Pearsall and Cowing get off to good starts in September, and you've got maybe Debo playing well, and you've got Aiyuk kind of pouting because they told him we're not paying you until next offseason. They may decide to pull the plug and trade him to Pittsburgh then. Could happen.
I gotta sneeze. Excuse me. Yeah, look.
There's a lot of options. I mean, there are a lot of options here, but don't. I mean, the media game. Don't you think it's a little bizarre that Matt Mayoko is saying that, putting out right in the midst of, there was a report in the last couple of days that the talks, are beginning to intensify, and that's kind of the direction that it's going to go.
What I think is a little bizarre is that if you and I have talked all this out and hashed this out months ago, like we were talking about this pre-Super Bowl, I mean, the 49ers have obviously played this chess game out in their own mind to several different conclusions. And they know their player better than we do. They've done deals with him. They've done a deal with him. They know his agent. They know him. And Aiyuk does seem to be the kind of guy who takes this very personally, and he doesn't have that. Well, this is just business, but I'm going to go out and play my game. He does seem to be like level of personal angry that this has not happened. And it just feels like the 49ers have got a price point in mind that they will not come off of. And if that price point is not going to align with Brandon Aiyuk's price point, there should have been a trade pre-draft to have eliminated this. And again, if Aiyuk is a $30 million a year wide receiver in his own mind, well, the 49ers couldn't get a first rounder for him. I'm guessing I'm guessing the Justin Jefferson on the trade block would have commanded a first rounder. Jamar Chase, first rounder.
Well, there was also a report the Niners made an offer for Jefferson. I think most people would have to assume that Aiyuk was part of that offer. So then you're sitting there going, oh, wait a second. So you've already kind of thought about moving on from without me. And just because you have a good idea of where they're at and they've got a good idea of where you're at doesn't mean that you're not at an impasse. It just means that, hey, yeah, we know. I mean, the report came out from Ian Rappaport after the combine on Sunday of the combine. We're talking about way, way back in February when the combine was held in Indy, that the Aiyuk camp wanted to wait until all of the free agents and all of the receivers situations, clarified themselves before he signed with the 49ers. So that meant he wanted to wait on Jefferson, and now Jefferson signed. He wanted to wait he wanted to see the market reset itself before he, took the leap. And so that tells me, and should have told the Niners, this guy wants top of the scale money, right? Because he believes he's either at or near that top of the scale. And if the 49ers, let's just say, had said to themselves, we want this player for $23 million, and now maybe if Silver's reporting is accurate, that they're now at $26 million, well, it would be a deal if the guy wanted 25, right? But It's obviously not a deal if they're offering 26, and it's probably because he may want 30 and he may want 32.